Hello, everyone. It's nice to have you back again this semester. We are glad that we are alive and protected from the situation. The new semester has begun, and we want to start our class this afternoon together. For those who are here, some of you know me, some of you don't know me. As a new student, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Amos. I am the professor in charge of practical theology, and I am teaching Christian worship for this semester. And I hope that together we shall learn more and improve ourselves in the aspect of Christian worship. Having said all I've said, we will continue with our class at the moment, and we will have to see the course outline together, a brief on what we need to do to be able to complete this section of this subject. And already PowerPoint all my lecture and course outline. So let's look at the course outline now. Now this is the course syllabus as you have seen. The professor, the course, and this is my email. You can email me any assignment that I'm gonna give you at the end of the class today. My email is sazaduxon@gmail.com. So, and the subject is on the practical theology course, and it's 2 hours. And so this course is designed to help the student on how important the service is from the olden days to the present time, and also for the future, and how we can change the situation. And then the aim of our subject or this course is to know what worship is, to compare other worship principle, and to focus on the biblical principle of Christian worship, and also to promote the worship in the church in the future. Today we have different kind of worship, and people tend to present all kinds of worship to suit their own congregational desire. But are those worship biblical? And are those worship real that we are expected to do? So we need to find out and be able to identify how we can focus and succeed in promoting and uplifting and glorifying God's name. Okay, so the textbook, we have textbooks that we're gonna use for these worship courses today. This is one of the book, which is called Engaging with God, a Biblical Theology of Worship by David Peterson. It's a very good book, but we are not going to spend more time on it since it's partial play. But this one is called Groundwork of Christian Worship by Susan J. White. It's a very important book that discusses more about what is worship, how do we worship, the principle of worship, the desire. Why is worship important in our churches? Like we can do worship. Worship is not only in the church, but we have worship at home, worship in school, worship in different places. So we want to find out all these in our study this semester. We have many books. Now, these two books and other books that I want us to talk about are here. You can see the books up here. So these are some of the books. This is David Peterson, and this is also, we have a book with Hortoldo Larry, which is The Origin of Christian Worship. We can find that. The Context and Character of Early Church Devotion. It's a very good book. We have also another book, Worship in the Early Church. Okay, Worship in the Early Church. And the last one, Worship Matters, Leading Others to Encounter the Greatness of God. So all these books are available if you want to glance to them for worship. And I hope that you will make a choice, a good choice to read this books for yourself. Okay. Next is the class lecture. Under the class lecture, we have the class lecture will be introduction. We are doing introduction, but when we meet physically, we will continue with the introduction of the class so far, and then we have a group interaction presentation, which we will gonna share few people to discuss in a group. But if we are many, then we can, it's better. But if we are few, then we can go on individual presentation one by one. One of the important things to do in this class participation. So we will interact together. Okay? Individual presentation is there, which is going to be the final. So everybody is going to present a paper on worship, a particular aspect of worship that interests you. Okay? You can choose out of the Christian worship and tell us why you choose it and what we need to learn from there. Okay? Also, these are all about assignments. There are 2 or 3 assignments we're going to do, which is going to be every discussion. At the end, we'll have a little take-home test if possible. And then so, these are all about the lecture that we're going to do. Okay? So today, we want to introduce the lecture and to know what is the lecture is all about. Okay? So are we ready to go to the PowerPoint that we have for the lecture for today? All right. We have come to today's study, and then we're going to start with this, the study of Christian worship. If I may ask you as individual, you can have a take-home assignment. First assignment, you can write what is a worship in your own understanding. Don't write what I'm going to give you today. So you have to write a page and submit it for me next week. What is worship? Not even Christian worship. What is worship? And why is Christian worship? There are 2 questions in one. Just one page. Okay, everybody? What is worship? And what is Christian worship? You have to define worship and Christian worship. So there are 2 questions, but in one answer. Okay? So that's only going to be like 2 or 3 paragraphs, like worship and Christian worship. Then you give me your own perspective of understanding of what worship is in your own way. Now, let's look at what I have for you on the board. Now, what is worship? That's the question. Now, worship in our time has been captured by the tourist mindset. Now, tourist mindset in the sense where people, they capture worship on their own as something that we see every day. Okay? Now, worship is understood as a visit to an attractive site to be made when you or when we have adequate leisure. Now, people believe that worship should be something or occur where you are at peace, where you are calm, where there is no distraction. Okay? That's what people think. So, worship, it says, worship is a visit to an what? Attractive site. I don't know if worship has to be attractive first before we can attend to that. But we're going to find out what it means. So, for some, it is a weekly jaunt to church. For others, occasionally visit to a special service. Now, weekly, that is Sunday, if you have to do with other Christians. Sabbath, they call it Saturday. So every Saturday, they go to church for worship. But today we have what we call the Pentecostal. In Pentecostal churches, they don't take worship as only on Sunday. They have midweek worship, so they go to everyday worship they want. Some churches is every day they have a different kind of worship. But in other denomination, they have Wednesday, which is midweek worship, and then they have a Sunday worship twice in a week, and others are activities. Which one is yours? Everyday worship, weekly worship, or just a special occasion worship? We have people who don't even know what worship is. Only once in a year when they come to celebrate the Christmas, they say that is worship. Some Easter time, they say it's worship. And they attend the Easter worship because of what God has done for them. So, some with a band of Christian entertainment and sacred diversion plans their lives around special events like retreat, rallies, and conferences. Now, these are where people look at it as worship, special time. Okay, we have retreat, we have rallies, and we have conferences. Now, in conferences, we have different kind of worship. We have joint worship, we have group worship, we have people's worship, and so many of that nature are called worship. And then if I may ask you, what kind of worship do you always attend? Okay, so as I was saying, retreats, rallies, and conferences. Some retreat is purely a worship of prayer, a worship of psalms, a worship of intercession, but it depends on individual and whatever individual is trying to. The next we talk about, we have to see a new personality, to hear a new truth, to get a new experience, and so somehow expand our understanding, otherwise hindrance life. Okay, so generally worship, Christian worship, or rather worship in its own is a gathering. We can say a gathering coming together of people to give praise and worthy and whatever adoration to God. Okay, the meaning of worship. The meaning of worship is number one. There are many meaning of worship. The first meaning is the origin of the word and the language. The primary is Hebrew word from worship. Okay, let's see the Hebrew word of worship. Number one, what is the word? A. Sakah. This is a Hebrew word, and it means to depress, that is, prostrate. When when someone is above you, you go down. It depends on how you do it, but people go down, bow down to people to worship. Even like today, churches today, we have those who call themselves bishops, those who call themselves whatever names. Members bow for them. So members do go and bow down to them. I don't know how it looks like, but the only person we can bow and worship is God. But people bow for them and worship them. We have in homage to royalty of all, give homage to God. Bow, prostrate to God. self. Now individual, bow down by yourself, or crouch, which is bend, or fall down. Now I watch a video sometimes about uh, let me buttress the point of what I said bow down. And let me buttress the point that says you go flat down or humble you down to worship. I watch a video sometimes about someone who called himself a prophet or a man of God. He was coming to the church and people are on the way, and you know what happened? He parked his car. The moment they saw him, they bow and kneel down and put their head down, and he was passing by. Nobody stood up until he went to the church. As he entered the church and climbed up to the pulpit, before everybody stood up where he was and started walking back right inside the church. If people can bow down like that to human being, how else can we bow down to God and to be able to do what is doable for him as in time of worship? Okay, so let's see. And then, is that honorable to God or is that honorable to people? So, do reverence make to stop and worship. So when you reverend means you worship God. So worshiping is a kind of respect, is a kind of way of showing appreciation to what God has done. Now, number 2 is proskuneo. That's the Greek word of worship. Okay, proskuneo, it's another word for Hebrew, meaning to kiss, like a dog licking his master's hand, face, mouth, and everywhere. Okay, now you remember the Bible says we should kiss everyone. When Paul was saying to his Timothy and Co, that make sure you extend my greetings and my word and kiss it. So the meaning of proskone, meaning to kiss, like a dog who licking his master's hand. To fawn or crouch. 2, homage. Okay, to adore, adoration, give adoration to God. Now this word proskone in the New Testament, or the word to kiss or to adore, appears 59 times where in the New Testament. It originally carries with it the idea of subject falling down to kiss the ground before a king or kiss their feet. Now, how many of us can kiss the feet of our leaders? How many of us can kiss the feet of our leaders? We have people doing that. Is it right or is it wrong? So if it is right, give me your answer by next time we meet. This is one of the questions I want you to look into it and be able to know what is right and what is wrong in worship. Okay? Number 3, sebomai. Sebomai means to reverence, hold on, oi, means in respect. Okay? Reverence God is fearing God, is believing in God and doing things in honor of God. This word appears 10 times in the New Testament. Okay, so how do you fear and how do you reverence God? To reverence God, I talk about the word hold in awe to God. Now, people use the word fear, but not scare. When you fear God, it means you reverend God. Okay? So, to fear God, to reverend God, to honor God is the same thing. So, what we are saying here is worship is a time in which you give God the adoration, complete time and mindset. But sometimes people worship God with their mind somewhere. No, our worship should be focused on God. We don't worship people. We don't supposed to kiss people. Even though pastors are representative to God, we don't have to kiss their foot. What for? What are we doing that for? So we need to remember that when we give glory to God, we're giving it to God alone, not to human. So we need to give God the glory and be able to honor him at the same time. Okay, let's continue to the next point as we are discussing on the computer. So the next one is the latrio. Latrio means to render religious service of homage. It's used 21 times in the New Testament. To render. How do you render the religious service of homage? It's also people go home, people homes to pray with them in worship, in songs, and in praises. But that's the difference between the Asia and the African, if I might come into this area. In an African context, we can really go home, people's home, our members' home, and have a worship there. But in Korea, normally, or in Asia in specific, we can see that mostly is in the church that have a worship. Maybe family worship is there, okay. But people move, like in our denomination, we have what we call chain worship. We call it, we divide people into group, okay, and have these people, that people, and we call them in Hausa Angwa. Then we have a worship with that. Okay, people go and worship, and we report on Sunday. It's not that we want to maintain one day worship, but we have Wednesday worship, and then people cannot all come on Wednesday. Then we have the other one that which people can be able to worship with other people. Now, the question that I want to pose for all of us, you can understand me very well. Did man create a God to worship? Or did God create man to worship? Either way, but man created God and he worshiped God. Okay? Some people created God. Most people in the African context, they make God. They cut a firewood, they cut a stick tree and put the eyes another one and spray some blood and other things and put some hairy another one and put them there and go there and worship them. They bow down to them and then ask for everything. Now, somehow tactically it happens, they said. I never tried. Most you see, they have those kinds of things. Now, it means I saw them actually. I saw those kind of gods, but does it really work? In Africa, yes, they said it works. Even in movie, when you watch African movie, you can see that people go there to worship those gods. They have a white garment hole that they go to worship, and then you go there to worship for certain times and certain time, and then get your result that you want. But those ones that make God, they do it outside under the tree, or they create a little hole. I remember when I went for mission somewhere, and we had a place where we went, but this one we don't call it a worship because they are doing incantation and evil things. But one of the pastor he went inside and pulled out everything and burned it down because he believes it's a secret. society or something that has to do with evil intention. So is it right? I don't know. Find out and let's talk about it when we meet. All right. Now, you have to tell me this question next time when we meet. As I said, is it right? Do you have any experience? Do you have any similar situation like mine? Men created their God, or God created you to worship him? You know, the purpose of God's creation on earth, the Bible says, is for us to worship him. Okay? God created us to worship him, to have fellowship with him, to have relationship with him. But the other way around, people created their God and they worship their God. Let's see what Sigmund Freud said. Because man needs security, has deep-seated fear. Because men have fear, so they need a security. What happened? And lives in a threatening war, which feels out of his control. He invented a superior, supernatural being, like the bogeyman. You see? Another way, that's a segment is giving us an example of someone, because of fear, he wants to have a security, and he invented a god that he called the bogeyman. Represents all of our what? Deep-seated fears. God represents our confidence in the face of these fear. If truly we have God, the Bible tells us God is spirit. And if it is a spirit, he can live in us. Why are we afraid? Except we are not children of God. But if we are children of God, we should be able to see that God lives in us. If God lives in us, then we don't need to fear. Does man really experience all of these anxieties? Does that mean that man invented God, or just that? Okay, just that man unquestionable needs God. Yes, we have no question about that. We really need God because the Bible teaches us that he is the creator. And if he is the creator, we really need his presence and attention. He is in us, he lives in us, and he made lives work fine for us. Without question, man unquestionably needs God in his life. If anyone say he doesn't need God, then he has a problem. Then he should find who created him. Someone, we have scientists, we have evolutionists, we have different kind of way people explain about the creation. Now those are people, or those are saying that makes people feel that we don't have a God, because they believe that we exist on our own. And then when we exist on our own, then it means we are God by ourselves. We are human God. We are God, small God. Then we make ourselves. But the reality is there. The Bible makes it clear. By the nature, by the things we see, we know there is someone who is greater than us, that has made us what we are. He created us for this purpose. And that is why we are meant to worship him. And our time, we will have taken some of the explanation by David Stone in his book about what is worship. And Suzanne, we could check about what she had about worship in our previous and in our next class. So today, I want us to understand this fact before we end up the class. Sigmund is looking at our fear as nothing compared to what? To depending on God. So are we really depending on God, or are we depending on human being? Now, are we depending on God, or are we depending on ourselves? Are you a scientist who believes there is no God? Are you an evolutionist who believes there is no God? If you don't believe there is God, then you don't need the worship. But if you believe God exists and God has created you, God has made you, then you should know that God exists. Now, remember that I've given you a question. What is worship in your own perspective? You can Google, but you should not copy what the YouTube says. In your own understanding, as a Christian, since you gave your life to Christ, what do you think worship should look like? What do you think worship really means? In a biblical part, no need. Since we're going to study the Bible together, just tell me what worship means in your own understanding, and make sure you have convinced me that worship is what you believe it should be. Okay? We shall meet next class also, and we continue from there to see what Susan have to say, and David also what he said, and all the scholars about their mindset about what worship is. So please send your one-page assignment to my email that I have given you, which is azadukson@gmail.com. azadukson@gmail.com is my email. God bless you as we see you next week. Thank you and have a wonderful week. But be sure you are safe from the corona. Thank you and have a good day.